It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the inauguration of the Lilavati Lalbhai Library this evening. To begin with, may I request our President Dr. Bimal Patel to say a few words. Dr. Bimal Patel.
Trustees of the Ben Lilavati Lalbhai Trust, Jayshree Lalbhai, Sanjay Lalbhai, Surut Sarabhai, Rajiv Lalbhai and Sunil Lalbhai. Our Chairman, Sanjay Lalbhai, members of the governing body of CEPT University and members of the Board of Management of CEPT University, the architect of our library, Rahul Mehrotra, and all his specialist design associates, the building contractor of our library, Shri Patel and his many associates, the project managers at CEPT University's campus office, Director of CEPT Library, Snehal Shah, Librarian Tejaswini Ben Joshi, and staff members of our library, students, colleagues, and friends. Thank you all for coming. It is indeed a momentous occasion. We are gathered here this evening to inaugurate the new Lilavati Lalbhai Library. It has been built with support from the Ben Lilavati Lalbhai Trust and other grants from Government of Gujarat. The Lilavati Lalbhai Library is a terrific new facility on our campus. It can house over 100,000 books and documents, a portion of these in a limited access basement, the rest in a unique and marvelous 3-level interlocking architectural stack that manages to elevate the mundane task of storing books on shelves and retrieving them into an architecturally rewarding experience. Once you have experienced these stacks, I'm sure that you will agree that they alone make this library a truly significant piece of architecture. But its innovative stacks are not the only remarkable feature of this library's architecture. On the first and second floors, our new library has 2 beautiful and well-furnished reading rooms. Views from these reading rooms celebrate the architecture and landscape of our campus. On one side, they overlook the newly developed Shrenikbai Plaza, the Faculty of Architecture building, and our still under construction canteen. And on the other side, they have a gorgeous view of the South Lawn trees. Needless to say, the reading rooms are digitally connected and they provide an already much used work and study space for our students. At the first level basement, a moat-like subterranean courtyard, which is crossed over by bridges, rings 3 sides of the building. When furnished, this architecturally intriguing space will serve as a more relaxed reading and interaction space for students. On the first as well as the second basement levels, beautiful, silent and serene reading carols and study spaces surround the stacks. Here, even though one is in a basement space, the natural light that filters in from the courtyard and from the glass brick skylights keeps one in touch with the world outside. It should be no wonder that these carols and study spaces are also already much used by our students. On the ground floor, the library has a well-located, dynamic exhibition and jury space. It's right here. It cannot be missed as one goes in and out of the library, or even if one is just passing it by. Its exhibitions and events will enrich life at CEPT for many years to come. The Lilavati Lalbhai Library's rich and inspiring architecture make it a significant addition to CEPT campus. It is all the more significant because it is distinctive and has a unique identity of its own that adds to the architectural diversity on the campus. The manner in which it sits with reference to other buildings and the manner in which it is designed also helps to unify the campus. As you can see, the library sits at the heart of the campus. The library's main entrance reinforces the access formed by the marvelous entrance stairs of the Faculty of Architecture building. Its distinctive facade and its platform, and this platform that we are on, helps to define the Srinivati Plaza. It also provides the university with an appropriate setting for its convocations and other similar events. The library's eastern facade and the low pavilion opposite it form the South Lawn Plaza. The plaza will provide the university with a much needed formal garden space for small gatherings and events. The scale and architectural language of the building resonates with that of the surrounding buildings. If one thinks about it more deeply, it is absolutely clear that the architecture of CEPT's Lilavati Lalbhai Library demonstrates that if we are sensitive and accommodating towards others and restrained in what we demand for ourselves, then it is possible to hold diversity together in a unity that transcends us all. Rahul, on behalf of the entire CEPT community, I thank you for making a beautiful and fitting addition to the architecture on our campus. It will inspire generations of students to come. As an alum, on behalf of CEPT's many alums, I applaud the manner in which you have nourished our alma mater and have set an example of how we can constructively give back to it. Lastly, as a fellow practicing architect, please accept my most sincere compliments. You have created an architectural masterpiece. Salute and congratulations. Before I end, I want to draw your attention to another aspect of the Lilavati Lalbhai Library that is as important as its architecture. The establishment of this library should give us all a great sense of pride and hope. Let me explain why. Our city has rich traditions of enlightened philanthropy, trusteeship of wealth, engaged citizenship, and selfless public service. It has a rich history of its business people, its politicians, its professionals, its intelligentsia, and ordinary men and women from many walks of life coming together and working cooperatively towards the city's betterment. Ahmedabad has a rich history of great leaders like Gandhiji, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Kasturbai Lalbhai, Vikram Sarabhai, and many others who nurtured the spirit of cooperation and public service and built or nurtured its many institutions. I am sure that you see why I am saying this. The building of this wonderful new library at CEPT University clearly demonstrates that the spirit of enlightened philanthropy and engaged citizenship are well and alive in our city. The building of the library clearly shows that Ahmedabad's people still believe in their common future and believe in working collectively towards its betterment. Many people have contributed to realizing this library. It's impossible to name them all. On behalf of all of them at CEPT University, at RMA, and at PSP projects, I want to thank the trustees of the Ben Lilavati Lalbhai Trust for giving us the opportunity to work on this wonderful public project. In giving us this opportunity, you have also given us the opportunity to nurture the most cherished traditions of our city, which are cooperation and public service. Thank you very much. With that, I invite you, Sanjay Bhai, to say a few words. Thank you very much.
This is a little bit of a surprise because I didn't think that I was to talk. Jayshree was to speak because she is a much better speaker. Okay. Well, I'm very happy that this library has come up. I'm sure that Auntie would have been very happy and proud that something of this beautiful library would finally come from the trust which she has formed. So I'm extremely delighted that finally, after a very short span of time, almost 1.5 years, in a very quick time, such a beautiful building and library has taken shape. This generally, as if you all know, that Ahmedabad Education Society was formed way back in 1935. And if you look at the experiment, it's been a unique experiment. I've been always told so, that the industrialists and prominent individuals in Ahmedabad, at the instance of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, came together to contribute and build institutions for higher learning. And what I have learned over the years when I grew up in this family is that when you build these institutions, they completely change the landscape and the economic future of not only your nation but the whole world. So we have seen Vikram Sarabhai, Kasturbai Lalbhai, Amritlal, Hargovan Das, Dr. Mavlankar, and many people who came together of a phenomenal stature without any personal interest. Correct? They contributed their ability, their wealth, and more than their wealth, their effort and intellect and their abilities to create this institution. And over the years, some of the finest institutions have come up under the auspices of Ahmedabad Education Society. I think many of us are alumni of these institutions. The School of Pharmacy was started, and we can see that today Gujarat is the pharmaceutical capital of India. IIM, the best institute of management school, came up at the instance of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, and with support of Kasturbai Lalbhai. And we can see the top CEOs, not only in India, but some of the largest companies in the world are managed by alumni of these institutions. So the power of creating knowledge and the power of these institutions in the journey of humankind is unparalleled. So with this huge responsibility, the governing board today is trying to ensure that we can live up to this legacy and a great inheritance and responsibility which we have got. And our vision is to build institutions which will serve this nation for decades and generations. The governing board, I'm very happy to state that various industrial business houses are represented on this governing board. All private universities in India are either promoted by one large group. I can't think of any other method by which these institutions have come up. Whilst this is the only, Ahmedabad Education Society is the only society which is promoting higher education, where not a single large institution, business house or individual has any kind of final say. It's a collective wisdom. It's the diversity which is of thoughts and leadership which is managing these various institutions. We have two private institutions, universities. One is CEPT and one is Ahmedabad University. Both these universities, our vision is to build not only the best universities or institutions in India, but the one which can be paralleled or comparable to the best in the world. So we are benchmarking against the best in the world. And the simple principle is that if you have stellar faculty, which is doing cutting-edge research, and where you can bring in the best minds from all over the world to teach in these universities, and then you have very bright students to support them, then you get into a virtuous cycle of creating an institution of excellence. Our job is pretty simple. Managing a very complex kind of control system and mechanism which is still prevalent in India in higher education. So we are working with the government to see that can we be awarded complete autonomy, and can a governing board be the only board which decides and steers these institutions without any kind of constraints imposed by the government. So that's one very major task for which we are spending endless amount of time, both in Delhi and in Gandhinagar. The other thing what we all work towards is that can we capitalize these institutions, so for want of money, we do not, slow down the pace of growth. And I'm happy to state that we have enough corpus now to build institutions of excellence. So that has been achieved. And to bring enough diversity and create a governance mechanism. We have seen that, universities in America and Europe have survived for more than 600, 700 years. And why have they survived? So we are learning from them that what kind of governance has been put in place, that over so many centuries, these institutions have survived, not only survived, but have contributed immensely to the development of the entire world. So we are learning from them. We are ensuring that these institutions don't get hijacked by one thought or one strong voice, and a proper governance and diversity is brought in to ensure the longevity of these institutions. So having said that, I wouldn't like to take more time, but I'm very pleased that we are on course in all the things I've stated, that finally the government has come around and said that 20 institutions will be given complete autonomy. So we will not be governed by either Delhi or Gandhinagar. So we are trying very hard that we qualify amongst those institutions which will be given complete autonomy. And the rest is under our control. So if we can't get it done, then the only people to be blamed are us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay Bhai. May I request Srimati Jayshree Lalbhai to say a few words on this occasion.
Dear friends and family, good evening. I speak here today on behalf of the Lilavati Lalbhai Trust. Many present here may have known her personally, but for those who haven't known her at all, I'd like to introduce you to the person who made it possible for this beautiful library building to be here today. Lilavati Lalbhai was a woman of substance. She was born at the turn of the century in 1899. She was the youngest of 7 brothers and sisters and the youngest child of Shri Lalbhai Dalpadbhai. At a time when women were largely confined to their homes, she stepped out into the world of business and industry. She went to study at Banaras Hindu University, and on her return, went on to take an active role in the Lalbhai textile mills. She was a great source of support to her brothers Chimanbhai, Kasturbhai, and Narottambhai Lalbhai in both managing the business and nurturing the extended family. She was a generous and deeply caring person. When her eldest brother's children lost their mother, she devoted herself completely to looking after them. When I got married and came into the family, I was struck by the extremely ordered and efficient life she lived. On one hand, she was a businesswoman, director of Raipur Mills. On the other hand, she was a homemaker par excellence, very particular about the smallest details of running a home. Each winter, she would meticulously prepare a winter specialty called Shalam Pak with utmost care. It involved preparing and cooking some 34 ingredients, and each piece she made was a piece of art, distributed amongst friends and family. To this day, no one has been able to match her perfection. Not having a family of her own, she devoted herself totally and selflessly to the families of her brothers and sisters. And though she was the youngest, everyone turned to her for advice. She was active till the last, and when she passed on at the age of 91, we could say that she had lived an exemplary life. For her, education was a means of instilling free thinking and independence. She encouraged members of the family in this and was keen to see its potential made available for the less privileged as well, particularly for women and children. Her concern not only covered her family, but she thought about touching the lives of people beyond. Her will truly demonstrated that. She lived in a beautiful house designed by Claude Batley. In fact, many students of this institute from CEPT visit it even today as a subject of study. She specified that this house of hers should be used to enhance the lives of the lesser privileged women and children that lived in her neighborhood. She emphasized that the property be used to further education and health care for these people. Today, because of her largesse, we are able to run a center that teaches English, mathematics, and computers to children from the slums near her home. So far, over 1,000 children have benefited from this center, and the activity still continues. Looking for a project that would reflect her commitment to furthering education and enhancement of knowledge, the trustees felt that supporting the building of this library would certainly be in tune with her life philosophy. Lilavati Ben was lively, generous, and a clear-thinking person, and that spirit of hers will surely live on in this library. We are delighted with the way it has been conceived and designed. To Rahul Mehrotra, a big thank you. What a beautiful tribute to the memory of Lilavati Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayshree Ben. May I now invite Rahul Mehrotra to say a few words.
Thank you, Chirayu. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Jayshree Ben, Sanjay Bhai, Surud, and the other trustees of the Lilavati Ben Trust, who I'm not sure what those names are, but I'm sure you're all here. And a big thanks. I think it's a real honor and very moving to be standing here and to have been involved in this process. Besides being my alma mater, who would have thought as a student that one would actually do a building here, and I can't tell you how emotional that is. And also, as a student, one of the 7 case studies for my thesis on Claude Batley was Lilavati Ben's house, which I measured drew. So I was just sitting here and thinking that one studied here, I see the sign and the name. It was my thesis project, how it all comes together in life. One can never imagine, and it's just wonderful. And so one is very, very grateful. I also have been very moved by the whole process. When I was a student here at CEPT in 1985, when I was graduating in 84, I read a piece by an American scholar called Peter Sereny. And that was the first time I realized, because we were educated as architects, we always thought the architect was the one who drove the process and was the prima donna who took things through. And Peter Sereny's piece, which was I think a seminal piece, was about patronage, and his case was Ahmedabad. And he talked about what gave Ahmedabad the great buildings it did, and he pinned it down to patronage. He said patronage was the most important thing. And for me as a student graduating at that point, I suddenly realized how important patronage and patronage with awareness was for good architecture. And this was an amazing lesson. And I state this only because I think in doing this building, in being exposed to the process, I now see another generation of patronage that I had read about in the Ahmedabad case that is coming together, and I think creating a wonderful set of or transforming the built environment in incredible ways. And so for us at RMA Architects, and I speak for my colleagues, we are very, very grateful to be part of this larger mission. And it's a mission which I'm seeing unfold here in Ahmedabad, not only about a few buildings being built, but it's about reimagining, as Sanjay Bhai, beautifully articulated in his introduction, what I would call an educational ecology. Education can't exist on its own. You can't have a school of architecture if you don't have many other things. And it's finally the interconnection between all of these that is to create this ecology that makes for great institutions and universities. And the universities you allude to, which last for 500-600 years, is because their ecologies are robust. And so what is beautiful about what's happening here in the form of both physical infrastructure, social educational infrastructure, the intellectual infrastructure that's being built, which you emphasize both those things, is it'll give rise to an ecology, and that's what sustains for many generations. So it's wonderfully it's wonderful to be part of this process. What we were involved here in was at two levels, I believe. I think at the level of the building, but then just because one was student here, my relationships with everyone, you're all friends coming back to build something. I think we also got involved at the level of the site. And really for us, this was not an architecture, but also an urban design project. It was about making an intervention in what we consider a modern historic context, because these buildings that we see around us, the campus, were incredibly seminal for post-independent India and the construction of its own identity. And so we were very mindful of that. So everything done here, and that has evolved in the form of the plaza, the way you'll see things evolve over time, which involves many components, is really about an urban ensemble here. And so that was very important. So it wasn't just the building, it was these relationships that I believe will be the ones that sustain. And so at the level of the building, it was about recognizing the context, and therefore what we've done, and you'll see, is half the building is below the ground, because that was the only way to accommodate this massive program and yet respect the context. And so I say this building is literally grounded in context, both metaphorically and physically. And so it's a modern library, and we of course debated very much what a modern library was, because anyone I mentioned a modern library to, they said, libraries don't exist any longer. It's all stuff that's digital. But I think in the process we realized it was like Wall Street. People said in the 80s that digital technology is going to replace Wall Street in New York, but it was finally people discovering that face-to-face interaction is where the deals are made over coffee and martinis in the case of Manhattan. You shouldn't replicate that here. But so I think in the digital world we also need space, and we also need renewed relationships among people. And so one of the very important things for us here was to mindfully create a whole spectrum of spaces that are defined, as you'll see when you go through the library, both by scale, by the quality of light, by different aspects that allow people in their different temperaments to use the space differently, but also to be able to interact with books differently. And so there's a whole spectrum of scales. There's a gradient, I think, of what I call a gradient of distraction. So as you go up to the top of the building, there are many distractions. You see birds, you see trees, you see your friends walking around. And as you go below into the last levels, there is no distraction, because you're in what I would describe as very silent spaces. And so that spectrum was very important in the imagination. It was also, I think, in my discussions with Bimal and the committee, is how do you make a building instrumental also in teaching? And so we very much decided to use very ordinary materials. This is plywood louvers, it's concrete, there's gypsum board, there's large expanses of glass, which is what students will confront, and they confront in the new kind of India and the new imagination. But can you reconfigure these in ways that are more sustainable, that are more relevant, that give you new possibilities? And so it was trying to demonstrate things like this for students as a learning building that also was an aspiration. Now it's for people to judge how much we've met that. And so the variation of buildings and how these materials then begin to make students sensitive to light, to glare, to the way air moves. So this facade can be put in 6 or 7 settings in the way the louver degrees can be sort of adjusted, so you can modulate light. Each facade can be modulated differently, so it's very dynamic, and it's one that begs for engagement with students, and I just of course hope that will happen. At the level of the site, I think the biggest challenge was bringing calm and centrality to this plaza, and also re-establishing accesses and relationships that had been lost because of accretions, because of the incremental nature of growth of the campus. And so this library, which is the center of knowledge, now is on axis with the oldest building on the campus, which was designed by B.V. Doshi, and then the administration building now begins to, when all that work is done, speak to the Kanoria Center and begin to make more evident the different disciplines and cultures that exist here. And so I think that process at the level of the site is why I called it urban design, which is what campuses have to be about. Campuses, as if you imagine them as ecologies, then they're about making these interconnections which have to become explicit. You can't be romantic about saying that it's organic and we'll find our space. It happens, but it doesn't happen perhaps enough. And so I think it is about connecting the different parts of the campus. That's why the entrances are not symmetrical. They respond to the side that they're sort of on, and it sort of consolidates space for us. For me, the most important thing about being involved in this project, besides being, the honor of doing something for my alma mater, was really the process that we have collaboratively evolved. This has really evolved. I mean, I think Bimal established what he wanted in terms of transparency, engagement, but the process has been absolutely amazing. It's the biggest thing that I've taken out of this project, and I don't think I've experienced that in another project. It's been about workshops. It was very tough for me. Imagine doing a project where the whole committee is architects. And of that committee, 95% or 90%, if I can say that, are people who are more than 4 years senior to you. It's like really challenging. It's, the only project where when we have clients, we make presentations with great passion. And one extreme is, and this is not all clients, is that they will, after that incredible half an hour of sweat, they'll say, I don't agree with the size of the service entrance. So you kind of say, no, that's easy, we can fix that. And there are many pragmatic questions like this. In presentations here, the presentation would end with some silence and one member of the committee saying, Rahul, I totally disagree with the attitude you've taken in the way the building touches the ground. Now, that's not something I can say I can fix tomorrow, so it's sort of much harder as a process. But this was about workshops, this was about public presentations, things were loaded up on YouTube. I got emails from people in Canada, sometimes critical, sometimes giving positive inputs. I had never ever experienced that. And that is absolutely amazing because it was rich. One always felt one was in a jury. It kept you as honest as it could keep you. And I just want to reflect on this because there are many other buildings going to be built on this campus. Some presentations have started. And it's very important for us as a community to keep this debate healthy because it's only when that debate is healthy in this form of feedback loops that you can get a productive and a collective imagination for a new campus and for a new institution. And this debate can be derailed very easily. Some of it is happening, and I think we need to keep this process very healthy. I think buildings like this, processes like this, these are new forms of a new imagination of nation building. In our first sort of cycle of nation building, there was a very specific set of aspirations. This is nation building because, as we've all realized, education, capacity building, etc., is the key. And I think in this sense, and I'll just sort of end with a set of thanks and just some observations, is that I think first of all, this is a collaborative process and one must acknowledge everyone involved. I just want to make a few thanks which are very heartfelt. First of all, to Patel and Robert Stevens, who are the principals in our firms, who made it as much their mission as it was my mission, even though they weren't from CEPT. And Dilip Patel, who is the campus architect, who grounded us into the reality of Ahmedabad and making things happen. Great sense of humor, which sort of dissipated stress when we needed to. And then a special thanks to Ismat Kambata, who, and now Patel, I'm sorry, I know her as Ismat Kambata because she was a student here, who has been amazingly generous. And I'm really grateful to her. You know, when we decided to do this facade of louvers that move and things, we started seeing her projects, which were using these louvers, and we consulted her. And you know, she's put decades of research into developing the hardware, the proportions of some of these things, and she made this a gift to CEPT, which means she shared all her R&D, including things that she has patent on, without any charge as a gift, and allowed the contractor, in this case PSP, to actually appropriate that for the interest of the school. And this was an amazing, amazing gesture, which I want to acknowledge. And I also want to thank all her colleagues at FACE, which is the company that has done all this research. All the faculty that have been involved in this, Arthur Lalbhai, Jayshree Ben, and the entire library staff that has been totally amazing. Krishna Shastri, Chirayu, and Snehal Shah for the efforts that he finally made. He's the one who pushed the books from one set of shelves to the other set of shelves and made the library operational through all the sort of obstacles. And our consultants, Anal Shah, who's here, R.N. Joshi, and many others who are involved with many aspects of the building. But most importantly, really PS Patel, Lalji Bhai and Hasmukh Bhai, who finally crafted this building and cooperated and went really out of their way to do many things. I'm just going to end with a big gratitude to Bimal for shepherding this process, you know. And I think the support has been exceptional. I've never on any project in these 25 years made so many decisions so quickly, often on WhatsApp, with incredible efficiency, that made us finish this building really less than 20 months with design and building and 3 basements. It was just totally amazing. But I want to contextualize to end on a more serious note, which I think we should reflect on as architects, as patrons. You know, the biggest thing I took away from this project is understanding a different process. And I loop it back to my first comments on Peter Sereny, suddenly making me aware of the fact that patronage was probably more important than actually the design. And it made me see this project by unpacking, so to speak, deconstructing what we call a client. You know, so we say this client, someone's my client. But actually, there's a patron client, there's a client who's the operational client, and there's a user client. These are completely different entities. Why do we, when we build homes, weekend homes, single family homes, actually these 3 collapse into one entity. And so in many ways that becomes frictionless because the patron, the client, and the user is the same person, or a couple or a family, but usually collapsed. The more we get into institutional buildings, government buildings, actually the patron client, the client, and the user client are completely different entities that often don't even communicate with each other. They're often not even aware of each other. Now, the moment you see those as completely differentiated, the task is, how do you create those feedback loops? How do you create the connection? How do you simultaneously understand what those varied aspirations are, and how do you begin to make them all work for that differentiated set of aspirations? And I think for me, this challenge was some awareness that I got in a project like this just because of the processes. And I think in many ways Bimal played the role of creating those interconnections that we could actually meet with the patron client, people who are funding the process, understand their aspirations, also with the users through the process of presentations to students, listening to that kind of feedback. Now, we might not have incorporated all of it, but it was a completely different understanding of process for me, which I will take away from this project, this understanding of feedback loops, which is what really finally, I think, makes a project rich. And so in that context, on a more serious note, I really would like to thank all the clients, the patron clients, the client clients, and the users of this building, who I hope will treasure it and it will evolve and grow. And I think for me that has been it's been absolutely valuable. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Bimal. Thank you, the trustees of the Lilavati Ben Library. It's been an amazing pleasure, and I feel very honored that I was part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. May I now request Professor Snehal Shah, Director of CEPT Library, to say the vote of thanks.
It's a little dark. Everybody's been thanking everyone. So, but I still have to thank, because I must do, because so many names have not been said. And I cannot afford to not read, because it's a little less light. First of all, I would like to thank you all for coming here today and joining us in the inauguration of the event. Without you, this would not have been possible. Can you put this little light better? I can't read here. Is there somebody put the light better? Otherwise, I have to see it like this here. I would like to thank, first of all, trustees of Lilavati Lalbhai Trust, Shri Sanjay Lalbhai, Shri Jayshree Lalbhai, Shri Rajivbhai, Chinubhai, Shri Sunilbhai Lalbhai, and Shri Surudbhai, Sarabhai. Without your support, we would not have done this fantastic new building. I'm sure, Sanjay Bhai, today one soul will be very happy, and that is of Shri Lilavati Ben. Because especially she lived in one of the finest houses of the country, as that's what I think, of Cloud Betley way back in 30s. And part of that soul also going to be here in also very fine building designed by Rahul. So she would be the happiest person today, because she lived and she's still living in one of the finest buildings of the country. I would also like to thank again Sanjay Bhai and all the members of governing body and board of management for their unwavering support, and for not just this new building, but all the new initiatives and ideas that we've been working since few years in CEPT. So thank you. Without that, all this wouldn't have happened. In no small measure, thanks to Dr. Bimal Patel, Bimal, we've been telling, under whose leadership and vision this building, which is a great amenity to CEPT students, because we need a lot of amenities in CEPT. This is just the beginning. And this has become reality today. You have done extremely well, Bimal, being a fine architect, and now extremely well organized client, which you have never done, which you have done so well. Certainly not an easy task, ever. Thanks to Rahul Mehrotra and his entire team at RMA, and especially Patel and Robert, who look very handsome and beautiful, pretty today, because I've only seen them grubby and full of dust. I couldn't recognize you. And our contractors, P.S. Patel and Lalji Bhai, who played a small or a big role in conceiving the making of this such wonderful building. CEPT campus has been very famous for its architectural aesthetics and beauty, and now we have one more fine building with us. Now I have to just thank many people, so it's the names that I have to speak here. Thanks to our university staff in the campus office, the new project team comprising of Reshma Ben, Bhargav Tewar, Ashish Jani, and the facility management team concerning and comprising Mr. Devanshu Pandit, Mr. Ajay Patil, Mr. Divya Sharma, Mr. Sunil Ben, and others. You have delivered on your task, and now it is up to us, the library team, to make sure that this terrific building and facility is well used. I would also like to thank our library team, especially our librarian Tejaswini Ben, Rimple Ben, and many others, the whole team of 12 people, and entire administrative staff at the university, the registrar, and the other people. I applaud your efforts and initiatives to ensure the vision of this new building is realized through the processes you put so well to make these buildings ready for students to use. And finally, and not the least, I would like to thank students, not many are here, and the teachers and university. You have made this facility an integral part and our lives at CEPT. Already so many of you are using the library. We have already started using the library each day. You are giving us feedback, which we are going through each and every one, and we work together and make this building function properly. I assure you that we will do our best and continually improve on the various suggestions you have made. We are getting around, on the day one, we got 130 feedback. This is not right, that is proper, that is, and we said, okay, we are working. And we both, Rahul and Bimal, been helping us to make these things together. Because this is one of the best library that I know in any universities across the country, and we'll make sure that it remains that for years to come. I also have to apologize in the thank note to students, because while shifting from there to here, and it was raining very heavily in Ahmedabad, we took 3 weeks and we had to shut down the library. So students, we are going to recuperate this time and see to it that it is open now till midnight till the school is open. So I will work out, the times are there. And once again, I thank you all for coming today and joining us for this excellent event. Thank you.
Thank you, Snehal. May I now request our guests of honor one by one to come and light the lamp to inaugurate the library officially. May I start with Shri Sanjay Lalbhai. Okay. Shri Surud Sarabhai, Shri Rajiv Lalbhai,